What's up, YouTube? Welcome in to the YouTube live show here tonight. I've had better weekends. Not going to lie to you. I've had better weekends. Here, hang on one second. Make sure to shut that door for the purpose of the acoustics. Yes, I see my BYU fans in here. You guys did not have a great weekend either. Between that chant, how the game went actually at Oregon. I was actually watching like the extended highlight cut up of that right before I popped on here because our games were overlapping on Saturday. So I had my own dumpster fire on my hands to worry about as that game was going on. Yeah, not fun. K-State loses to Tulane. I know it was rough for Texas Tech fans, although, reasonably competitive game. I think the defense still should give you a lot of optimism if you're a Tech fan based on the way that they played against one of the best quarterbacks in the country on Saturday. But still, not fun there. Not a fun weekend for a lot of us. Pac-12 is having a nice weekend. I mean, all of a sudden, the Pac-12 looks a lot better than they did after their really rough opening weekend. So dynamics are changing, folks. Dynamics are changing both in the league and across college football. So look, get your shots in, Kansas fans. I'm not even gonna make you pay. You can if you want. You will have to pay later on in the show if you want me to address any of this. But since I saw the fact that you threw this in here earlier, was it Hawk Nation? Hawk Nation, I don't think I ever said that Adrian Martinez was a better quarterback than Jalen Daniels, and Jalen Daniels might be the best quarterback in the country. Jalen Daniels looks like certainly the best quarterback in the conference. Did anybody have somebody better than him in the conference right now? Because I don't know. Maybe are we going to give Dylan Gabriel some love for his touchdown run out of nowhere on Saturday in Lincoln? I don't. Jalen Daniels looks incredible. I've got nothing to say. Like, if you're hoping for me to be defiant here about the state of football in the state of Kansas right now, I've got nothing, dude. Kansas looks great. That offense looks incredible. I've got the Iowa offense basically right now is kind of what K-State looked like on Saturday. So no smack talk from me here, man. You're going to get nothing but concessions from me here. I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't know what to tell you. Well, look, I've got a lot of thoughts on what happened with K-State. Tide guy, K-State, the new Kansas. No, actually, Missouri would be the new Kansas, considering K-State just beat Mizzou 40-12 last week. That has to be the most annoying thing I've seen on the Twitter timeline from the last 24 hours or so ago. Like, Mizzou fans trying to pile in on this, like as if this is their opportunity. Like, by the way, Mizzou screwing around with Abilene Christian was like 34-17 on Saturday. You guys got your own problems. Including getting housed by K-State. So that I will not hear from. Kansas Jayhawks, you guys get in there and say whatever you want, man. You've earned it. It's been a long time since you guys have been able to talk like this, and you certainly can. So I'm not going to stop you. But I'm not reading any more of it unless you donate. So how about that? Look, we're going to talk about an SEC update for Texas and Oklahoma that we got from Greg Sankey over the weekend. He must have been speaking before one of the games this weekend, but I saw a quote from him come across Twitter with an update that I think falls in line with much of what I and most of us have been saying and assuming about Texas and Oklahoma for a long time. So we'll get to that. We'll cover the games in week 2. Honestly, as frustrating as this will be for most of us, like, I think it was a nice weekend for Texas and Oklahoma. Texas and Oklahoma both looked pretty good. I realized Texas fell behind early, but that game told me actually a lot about Texas. That is very positive. So I am grinning and bearing it as I come on here and tell you about a K-State loss to Tulane, Kansas looking like a top 3 team in the conference suddenly, and Texas and Oklahoma having really nice weekends as my squad gets to go roll into Norman next week in prime time. Whew. So I'm not telling you to feel bad for me, but if you want to feel bad for me, I wouldn't stop you, because it was not a great football weekend in any way, shape, or form. We've got some Pac-12 TV updates as well. There was a pretty long piece from John Wilner breaking down some of the dynamics of that, and even a concession, I would say, from John Wilner on advantages the Big 12 has over the Pac-12 that I think is worth reading and getting into, assuming that we have time for that today. But in order for us to get there will depend on where you guys want to take it. I already have a couple of donations that I'll get to here in just a second. If you want to make sure that your question or comment gets in on the chat and cuts through everything else going on, cuts through the noise that's happening in the chat tonight, you can do so by donating. Click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That will tack your question or comment up at the top for me and ensure that I see it, ensure that I read it. And it will help support the work I'm doing, bringing you Big 12 content week in, week out here on this channel. And if you are watching this after the fact, if you're not catching it live, you're watching it taped, and you like to donate and support the channel, it's John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. Appreciate those of you guys that have been doing that as well. Much appreciate all the love that all of you guys give me here on this channel. So with that, also, if you could like the video, I would appreciate that a lot. It's free, takes just one click, helps me with the algorithm. Just like the video, and that is a free way that you can contribute to the channel as well. So I appreciate that. Oh boy, I see. Why is Kurt so sexy? All right, now we're talking. I need that. I need some positive self-talk here. Positive self-talk after a very, very rough football weekend. Thank you. McMuffin is first out of the chute. McMuffin, my favorite name here in these chats. McMuffin says Tulane beats Missouri by 50. Well, if we were doing the actual transitive property there, then that would be pretty accurate, because really the score of that game was 40-6, not 40-12. Eli Drinkowitz got a roughing the passer penalty and used a cheap timeout with like 5 seconds left to get that last score. So we'll say 40-6, that's 34. Then K-State loses by 7 to Tulane. Yeah, we've got Tulane by 41 over Mizzou. So McMuffin, that math pretty much checks out. And again, Mizzou did not look much better on Saturday against Abilene Christian. So they've got some problems. Have fun with that SEC schedule, Mizzou. Have fun. Calico Willie, what's up, Calico Willie? Calico Willie says, hey, John, just want to say I'm not mad at our Cats, just disappointed. Was Tulane that good, or is our offense that bad? Well, as is the case with any situation like this, it is typically some of both. I think it is some of both. I think Tulane, they bowl program for 3 straight years before last year when they were displaced because of the hurricane and went 2-10. And remember last year, they damn near beat Oklahoma at Oklahoma. Oklahoma fans know full well how scary it can be playing Tulane. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this offense doesn't have massive problems. Massive problems. Massive problems. Look, Deuce Vaughn was cramping for a lot of the game. He missed an entire quarter. That didn't help. But the offensive line was struggling with the front of Tulane. But beyond that, really, I hate to say it because I know so many people will just look at this and like, yeah, of course, dude. But Adrian Martinez is an issue right now. But it's not in the way, everyone's going to run in and be like, well, you guys have Adrian Martinez as quarterback. Of course you're having problems and losing to Tulane. But it's different. It's the total opposite. If you haven't been watching, it is not the Adrian Martinez at Nebraska who was throw for 10,000 yards and turn it over all the time. Adrian Martinez has not been turning the ball over. He's just overcorrected to the other side where he is afraid to throw the ball downfield. Just looks very timid, indecisive. Should have, I thought, hit Malik Knowles for a touchdown right before the half, but instead didn't get it out. Lots of times, going through 3, 4, 5 progressions, not doing anything, and then having to take off and scramble or whatever. Just does not. It looks like they have coached into him so much, don't turn the ball over, that it has taken on a life of its own, and he is just afraid to cut it loose. He's thrown basically 2 deep balls the entire year so far through 3 games. One was a perfect ball to Phillip Brooks that was dropped. The other was a touchdown pass to Cade Warner that was a gorgeous throw on Saturday, and it was the only score that K-State has. So, it's still there. It's in him, but right now he is not willing to throw the ball down the field, and K-State was just abysmal on 3rd and 4th and short. Abysmal. It was 7 times they had 3rd or 4th and 2 or less and didn't convert on Saturday. And therein lies some issues, I do think, with play calling. And Colin Klein is a new offensive coordinator, first year taking over full time as the OC at K-State. And I think we're experiencing some growing pains there also. I don't think Chris Kleiman handled well the decisions whether or not to go for it or punt. I disagreed with basically every single one. I felt like the feel was totally off there. So there are a number of issues. There are a number of issues. And I sound very downtrodden here because this was not like a fluky, stupid game that I feel like, you got beat. It was a crazy day for Tulane, whatever. No, I think K-State has some real problems. And I've been saying it for 3 weeks. I mean, that's the problem here is like the issues that I've seen and voiced concern about through the first 2 weeks of the season, even though they were lopsided wins, they were just there and exposed much more against Tulane, who clearly is better than Missouri and better than South Dakota. So that's the issue. And it means that there are a lot of things that are going to have to get fixed moving forward. Now, we overreact in college football all the time. So do I think K-State's going to lose by 50 in Norman? I mean, as much as like the fan part of me right now kind of says like, yeah, like probably not. And the Vegas line would reflect that. And one of the other games we're going to talk about is Oregon and BYU. How different does Oregon look now? A couple weeks after getting just smashed by Georgia, they look a lot different. Chris Kleiman has had moments in his K-State tenure where he has been very down. They lost to Arkansas State in 2020. You know where they went the next week? They went to Norman. You know what they did the next week? They beat Oklahoma in Norman. So, like, this has happened before, and at the end of the day, it usually equates to about a 7-5 season. And I think that's probably the accurate reality here, but that's the disappointing part for K-State fans because with 5 first-team All-Big 12 players preseason, you felt like this team had a chance to take a step forward and do something better than that. So that's the frustration. That's a pretty quick summation. Maybe it's not quick enough for everybody, but Calico Willie, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at with it right now. Peyton, thank you for the donation. Peyton says, longtime lurker in the chat, not a Kansas fan, but Jalen Daniels is a fun player to watch and looks like the real deal. That may be the worst part about it all, Peyton, for me. Kansas is fun as hell to watch. They are a blast to watch. Jalen Daniels is a blast to watch. I'm a kid. As a kid, I grew up with K-State football. K-State football and Bill Snyder always had the dynamic dual threat quarterback. I grew up with Michael Bishop, who should be a college football Hall of Famer, revolutionized the position, was the Heisman runner-up, and if not for the Ricky Williams Career Achievement Award, would have been a Heisman winner. Then you had L. Roberson playing with Darren Sproles, one of the most lethal video game combinations you could ever have, but just an incredible dual threat quarterback. Like, I grew up with these guys. That's the kind of quarterback I love, that plays near and dear to my heart. Jalen Daniels embodies all of that. He looks amazing. And especially held up as a comparison to the K-State offense, which has just been a slog and a struggle this year. That Kansas offense just looks incredible. So enticing. Like wandering through the desert, dying of thirst, and all of a sudden there's just an oasis, a waterfall. And that is Jalen Daniels in Kansas with their offense right now. So nothing but praise, man. I don't know how Leipold's been able to do it, because the thing to consider again about him is that it is year 2, but he didn't even get a full year 1. Like, he didn't get a full spring ball and all that in year 1 because of the timing of how all that happened with the clown show that was Les Miles and Jeff Long. He came, so he's like even behind what a year 2 coach would actually be here. It's unreal. It's unreal, man. I've got nothing. The only slight W I've picked up in the last 24 hours is the fact that College Game Day decided to not do the Duke Kansas thing, and instead they're going to Florida Tennessee. I think for Kansas's sake, look, Kansas will beat Duke. I'm sure they'll beat Duke. They're a better team than Duke. For Kansas's sake, they better hope that Iowa State beats Baylor, and then maybe they've got a shot still at game day next week. I don't know. Some of that will probably depend too. I think Arkansas plays A&M, and then you'd have Arkansas, Alabama. After that, I would see ESPN having a hard time passing that up if both of those teams are unbeaten heading into that game. But I digress. Kansas looks legit. That clearly is a bowl team. Beyond that, I don't know. It's still hard for me to compute like what exactly how high the ceiling on that thing actually is, because I mean there's just so much about it that's impressive for Kansas. Twice in a row now they've fallen behind 14-0 on the road, and of all the teams that should be going through like here we go again mode, like this is, we've been here before, this is where we lose, they instead blitz the crap out of you and score 28 straight. I mean, it's been the same recipe at West Virginia and then now at Houston, and these are teams with a pulse. Like, I don't know. We'll see what Houston and West Virginia's seasons turn into, but especially Houston, like that seems like a team with a real pulse, and Kansas was just pulverizing them, doing whatever they wanted on offense. So nothing bad to say there. And I agree with you, Peyton. I agree with you. David, thank you for the donation. David says, I'll admit Iowa State hasn't played anybody yet. With that being said, happy the Clones are 3-0 and looking forward to watching Big 12 play Baylor next. Incredibly intriguing game between Baylor and Iowa State next week. Baylor has been tested, obviously, more than Iowa State has, having to go play that game in Provo. Iowa State had to really eke that thing out against Iowa, who looks like historically bad on offense, but does have a very good defense. I don't know. It's really hard to know what to make of that result. But in general, for a season after Iowa State lost Brock Purdy, Breece Hall, Mike Rose, all the dudes, Charlie Kolar, all the dudes that they lost from last year's squad, and they're 3-0 and snapped the streak over Iowa, won at Kinnick. Yeah, you should be thrilled right now with where Iowa State is at. Couple of blowout wins against teams you should blow out, eke out the win against your rival to get that monkey off your back in a year where you just lost that historic group of talent. Yeah, Iowa State should feel great about where they're at. And they should feel great about where they're at right now. I was looking at some of the lines. What did I see? Baylor was maybe like a 1-point favorite in that game in Ames. I believe that's what I saw earlier. I don't even know what to make of that. I don't know what to make of that and like where you'd set a line on that game right now. Garrett. What's up, Garrett? Garrett says, as a fan, when would you say it's Rubley's team this year? That's a question about one of K-State's backup quarterbacks, Jake Rubley. I don't know. I mean, they're going to, if there's one thing we know about Chris Kleiman, he's going to ride with his guys. He's not going to be quick to bench somebody in that sort of spot. I think Adrian Martinez has at least another game or two where they're going to, I would imagine. I mean, you're going to play Oklahoma, who looked awesome on Saturday against Nebraska. You better be coaching him this week. Like, dude, just cut it loose. Just cut it loose. If you have turnovers, you have turnovers, but we've got to do something differently on offense here, or it's just not going to work. So I would imagine that it's going to be like a back to the drawing board kind of thing with him right now. They're still going to roll with him. And then the question will become, do they play Will Howard or do they play Jake Rubley? I know Rubley played against South Dakota, but they had talked about trying to save a red shirt this year for Howard. Personally, I've nothing against Will Howard. I've seen a lot of him. Haven't loved most of what I've seen. I would like to see Rubley get that chance to see what it looks like, but he's still very young, very green. I don't think the problem here is like thinking that the grass is tons greener. I don't know that it is. It would be next year when Avery Johnson gets there, but as of right now, he's not actually in uniform. So there are some issues here. There are some issues. Jeff, thank you for the donation. Jeff says Wilner seems to be sobering up. No, a little bit. Yes, a little bit. And he gave a concession, I would say, to the Big 12 in his latest piece. And I do want to get to that later on in the chat. I'm not going to dive deep into it right now, Jeff. But I would agree with you to an extent. I can see some of what you're saying there. He still does, and I get it. I understand the game. I understand the game and how it works. But he still does take some like low-hanging fruit Big 12 opinions and mentions that get thrown at him on Twitter and then like dunks on him publicly, which it's like, look, man, could you respond to some of the serious inquiries like Gambling Gauchos, for instance, who put together, if you missed that Twitter thread this week, they put together a Twitter thread of a bunch of games over the last 5-6 years that have had Big 12 teams in that like after dark time slot and compared it to Pac-12 and how much better it's been. And I did not see any response from him to that, but yet, somebody comes in with 10 numbers behind their name on the Twitter handle and just throws in like, oh, Pac-12 sucks. We're getting $55 million a year. And then he'll take it and say, Big 12 Twitter is 1/3 unhinged, 1/3 blah, 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 and 1/3 passion, and kind of just dunks on that comment instead of responding to some of the more serious stuff. So that is my frustration still a little bit there, but I understand that's the Twitter game, man. That's the Twitter game. And I'm just as guilty as he is of playing the same game. So totally get it. Alan, what's up, Alan? Alan says, hey, John, good show. Know how you feel. Hope your Cats beat OU. We'll take care of Texas. KU versus K-State for the Big 12 title. Maybe someday. Rock Chalk Jayhawk. Well, thank you for being nice, Alan. Thank you for being a good sport because you guys don't really have to be. Man, you don't really have to be. I'm not sitting here saying I deserve special treatment from Kansas fans at this point. You guys should take your shots, man. Talk your you-know-what. Make me read it. You got to donate, but you can make me read it, and I will, certainly like I did there for Alan. Looks like there's a much better chance right now of Kansas being in that game than there is K-State after watching them through 3 weeks this season. Hate to admit it, but I got to be real. I'm not going to lie to you here on the show. LB Studio. LB Studio says Iowa State is legit this year. They may well be. They may well be. I think I'm going to need to be convinced that Hunter Deckers can do it like week in, week out in the Big 12, but it seems like they're very solid. I've always felt like, and I think I said going into the year, Matt Campbell was not going to like fall off a cliff and not make a bowl game this year. And I mean, last year they were 7-6. So you're talking about basically kind of a maintenance sort of year this year. It'll just be obviously a lot different without Purdy and company. But I think, I mean, I've told you guys this too. I think Deckers has probably a higher ceiling than Purdy because I just think he was so overrated as a quarterback at Iowa State. So it would not shock me if Iowa State, look, the league this year is just very wide open. I mean, who is not flawed? Like, who of these teams feels untouchable right now? We've seen everybody look mortal, even if it was only for a half for Oklahoma against Kent State. They have looked mortal at times this year. Obviously, Texas has had their moments of looking mortal, and they are Texas. K-State has lost. Baylor has lost. Oklahoma State, maybe that's debatable. Maybe Oklahoma State, you would say you feel like they're the strongest team in the league right now. I'm still a little iffy on that. I don't think they're head and shoulders above anybody. It just feels like a year that could get pretty wild, as evidenced by the fact that we're sitting here with 3-0 Kansas. And there was legitimate talk of College game day perhaps going to Kansas to watch Kansas Duke. Like that's the sort of year that we're in right now. Shorts all year. I believe that was who I saw there. Yep. Shorts all year. What's up, Shorts all year? Shorts all year says, what is the clean snap rule? Pac-12 refs use that after BYU recovered a fumble when the center snapped the ball into his own butt. Refs gave it back to Oregon. I'm not sure. I'll be honest with you. I did not see that. So Shorts all year, like I said, I'm always upfront and honest with you guys. K-State was on at the same time as BYU Oregon. So like I had to be locked into K-State Tulane. And unfortunately, I just watched like a cut up of highlights of BYU Oregon. I did not see that. So I don't know. I mean, I can try and Google it for you real quick, but I don't actually know. Clean snap rule. I Google clean snap rule and it comes up with EPA regulations. So I honestly don't know what to tell you there. I'm sorry. I do not know. I will have to go back and try and catch that and see that. I see Pac-12 refs suck. Yeah, I get the frustration. Unfortunately, it's like the thing there. I know, I mean, it was 38-7 at one point. I didn't look like BYU's day, and Oregon, I think, is much better than they showed against Georgia. Really, the most telling thing from that result of BYU Oregon Shorts all year might just be how damn good Georgia is again, and how ahead of the pack the top tier teams in the SEC are from everybody else. And I mean everybody else. I'm talking Big Ten too, like everybody else in college football. Georgia and Alabama, basically, at this point, are just so much more overwhelmingly talented than everybody else. I think that's really what we learned a lot of on Saturday. A lot of people probably already knew that and believed it, but I think like it reinforced that idea, certainly. Calico Willie. What's up, Calico Willie? Thank you for another donation, my friend. Calico Willie says, I think they, being K-State, I think they just need to turn it loose with Adrian. Our defense is stout to help the offense sling it and risk the turnovers, but not being on the field forever. Also, why was Mess calling 4th downs? Yeah, so look, the defense has been great. I mean, K-State basically is a diet version of Iowa right now with this like great defense and an offense that can't move the ball much. Doesn't look very good. At least Saturday, they certainly looked like Iowa. Maybe that's not a totally fair characterization of Missouri, but with a lot of rain and stuff, they were playing it pretty conservatively. It was just that Deuce was able to get his, which he couldn't get as much of against Tulane. I agree. There's no choice but to cut it loose now. I mean, we've seen not only do you have a Big 12 schedule coming up, but you just lost to Tulane at home because the offense wouldn't cut it loose. You're going to have to do that, no doubt. And you should theoretically have a defense that can help hold down the fort somewhat with that. And why was Mess calling 4th downs? I mean, look, I will just say this. Colin Klein definitely helped them land Avery Johnson. They're not landing him, a potential transcendent quarterback for next year. They're not landing him without Colin Klein being the offensive coordinator. However, I know people got frustrated as hell with Courtney Messingham, the old offensive coordinator. But the numbers would show he was middle of the road to even slightly above average last year overall as an offensive coordinator. Colin Klein's a new guy, man, and I love him. He's a hero at K-State. I want to believe there's a lot of potential there. I do believe there's a lot of potential there, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be growing pains. And I think this is a bit of a case of be careful what you wish for, probably for K-State fans in some ways, that there are going to be some growing pains here. And yes, it was not very good in 3rd and 4th and short. It definitely was not. So I'm pretty much with you. Pretty much with you all the way there, Calico Willie. Joe. What's up, Joe? Thank you for the donation, Joe. Joe says, it looks like ESPN and the Big 12 are going to swing some deal to let the Sooners and Horns to enter SEC play in 2024. Squeeze them for every penny you can get, Brett. The dollar signs. That's right. B Izzo. All right, so that brings me to the update. Here is the update. This is from Greg Sankey via, I saw this tweet from Sam Kahn Jr. with The Athletic. I'm sure there were a lot of people that probably had this quote. But this is from the commish. Greg Sankey says, in light of the recent Oklahoma-Georgia series being canceled, Greg Sankey said that the fact the Alabama-Texas game is still scheduled for next year, quote, is a pretty good sign that conference alignments are going to stay that way next year. So if you were still speculating about the story that came out about Oregon or Oklahoma having to cancel that Georgia series and speculating about, does that mean that Oklahoma and Texas are gearing up, like the SEC's gearing up to get them in the league next year? Greg Sankey basically put out any thought of that with that quote and just said what anybody logically would think here, right? Like, we're too close to it. There's not enough time to make this move. It's such a large sum of money. We haven't actually heard anything tangible, any kind of leaks on anything. And the SEC right now seems very content. Remember, that was the conference that was the first to be like, hey, maybe we should pump the brakes on expansion here and not just totally blow this sport up and completely lose interest from huge swaths of the country because we turned it into 2 super leagues. They seem to be a little bit more forward thinking like that, a little more progressive with their thinking like that, and realizing that that could hurt them on down the road, even if it's better as a money grab right now. So to me, that lends itself to thinking that the SEC would be more content to just be like, let's just let it chill, man. Don't rock the boat. Don't upset the apple cart anymore. Let it stand. We'll get them in soon enough. And yes, 2024 obviously still would be a year early, but that's always been when I felt like it was going to happen. That's always been when it seemed like it would make the most sense to happen. Still give them some time to build it up, give some time for perhaps some feelings to change. And now with the Big 12, a commissioner to change, which probably helps the case here because Yormark is going to be concerned with, one, you're right, getting as much as he can out of a TV deal here and whatever the swap would be with ESPN. If you can let them go and get something in return, it seems like Brett Yormark is very much not a businessman, a business man. That's for my guy R. Webb, another Jay-Z quote there about Brett Yormark. But he's very much, I think, about doing whatever he can to maximize money and everything for the Big 12, which would probably include using Texas and Oklahoma as a bargaining chip. But 2023 was just always going to be too early of a target there. And plus, I do think it helps the Big 12 to have 1 year where you get the new schools in and then still Oklahoma and Texas there. You get everybody a run through at them, like one last shot at them. And think about like the TV. I mean, there's going to be some fun matchups on TV just for everybody to watch with the new schools playing the old schools before they get up on out of here. So to me, for a lot of reasons right now, everything was trending in that direction. But it's the first time, at least to my knowledge, that I've seen Sankey kind of stamp this himself, like put his own stamp on this, where Sankey says that, yeah, the fact Alabama, Texas is still scheduled for next year, quote, is a pretty good sign that conference alignments are going to stay that way next year. So if anybody had, I would assume it would just be a Texas or Oklahoma fan, had some like high hopes about Texas and Oklahoma making it happen like that and making it happen in time for next year, does not look like that is going to be the case. So yes, Joe, it seems like that's the way it is trending. I actually would think not only does it happen in 2024, but it happens with some kind of deal. And this is not any inside information. Do not get this twisted. Not any kind of inside information, just the way it feels like everything's going right now. It feels like Yormark would work something out to get extra money for the Big 12 to, in exchange, let Texas and Oklahoma go in 2024. That feels to me like the most likely outcome right now, but just a feel. That's a gut feeling. Glenn, thank you for the donation, Glenn. Glenn says, anyone else want to cry with me over the BYU game? I will, Glenn. Absolutely. I will cry with you over the BYU game because, well, one, look, I wanted to see BYU win. Definitely wanted to see them win that game, not only for the future Big 12 sake, but coming at the expense of the Pac-12, coming at the expense of Oregon. It would have been awesome. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. But also, I can commiserate, Glenn. I can commiserate. At least you didn't lose to Tulane. Oregon has the third longest home winning streak in the country. They do not get beat at Autzen. There is no shame in going down to Oregon at Autzen, even if it was to Bo Nix, and even if it was in blowout fashion. There's no real shame in that. There is much more shame in losing at home to Tulane. Oh, man, that even rhymes. God, I hate that. Hate it. Hate it. Hate it. There is more shame in losing to Tulane, and I'm sitting here making rhymes about it. It has been a weekend. It has been a weekend. And I think my guy Julius, thank you for another very, very generous donation. Always appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much. Julius, I think, can commiserate as well. He says, howdy, John. Losing sucks, but it's going to be awesome next year to take an L and hopefully still be in a conference race. On a good note, your Chiefs are undefeated and beat my Cards in week 1. Well, thank you, Julius, for bringing up Patrick Mahomes, because that does make everything all better, doesn't it? That does help a lot. I got a hell of a win on Thursday out of the Chiefs. Thank you for helping me look at the bright side, Julius. Very good therapeutic tactic of you here in this chat. I appreciate that a ton. I'm sorry about your Cardinals. That was rough in week 1 for them. But yes, the Chiefs here, and by God, you guys really want to get me going. I mean, you can say all you want about Kansas and all that. You really want to get me going. Keep this talk up about like Justin Herbert is that dude. Justin Herbert is better than he outplayed Mahomes. Whatever. Justin Herbert's sub 500 has never been to the playoffs, people. Patrick Mahomes has a ring. He's got an MVP. He's got a Super Bowl MVP. And he's won 3 of the 4 against Staley and Herbert. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are head and shoulders better than Justin Herbert and Staley combined. And that is the long and short of it. And I'm so sick of hearing like the Chiefs get held to this higher standard. All these quarterbacks get anointed as the next dude because they lose to Mahomes close. And that part annoys the bejesus out of me. So no more of that. None of that here in this chat. But I know that's not why you're here. You're here for Big 12 talk. Thank you, Julius. Hope the Cougs bounce back, which I know they will. Hope K-State bounces back. Maybe they will. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Thank you, Julius. Appreciate you being here. Joe, what's up, Joe? Joe hopping in here again. Joe says, please have Oklahoma play in Provo on a Thursday night at 9:30 Central next year, and Texas have to go to UCF and play on a Friday night. Would love it. Love it, love it, love it. And that's a part of the reason that I say, like, yeah, I would not think your mark would be about cutting some sweet deal to let them out before next year. Like, what an opportunity there to have them go play those types of games. And TV, I'm sure, would love it. And yeah, just road games there. Going to Provo and going to the bounce house for Texas and Oklahoma. I want to see that all day, man. I want to see that all day. Or, sending Texas to Houston would also be great. Although I have some thoughts on Houston in the Big 12 in light of what we've seen the last 2 weeks. Maybe I can get to that here in just a second. But yes, I'm with you, Joe. I hope those games definitely happen. And it's even funnier. Oklahoma complains so much about those 11 a.m. kickoffs, right? If you could throw Oklahoma some Thursday night, Friday night games on their way out the door against the new incoming schools in the Big 12, that would be pretty sweet. That would be pretty sweet, and some nice retribution there. Although, again, I feel like Bowlesby would be the one, in a way, in the vindictive way, more likely to do that. Your Mark would do it because he's going to see like, oh, that'd be great for TV and for these new schools and to help jumpstart the league and give the new schools a competitive advantage here, all those sorts of things. But Bowlesby would be like, middle finger to you guys for making me look silly. Remember when I went up on stage at Big 12 Media Days and said realignment's pretty much done, and then 48 hours later you guys were headed to the SEC? Yeah, it'd be a different situation there with him. But yes, so appreciate it, Joe. Appreciate it. Thank you for the donation. I see Justin, my man, our USF fan, our South Florida fan, Justin is in here. And Justin, I actually watched a lot of this game of USF and Florida, because about the time I was really settling into the night slate, just trying to put the Tulane game behind me, that was a very competitive game. And I was just thrilled for USF because I know times have been tough, man. It's been really hard, not just in terms of wins and losses on the field, but seeing UCF get the invite to the Big 12 and kind of leaving you guys behind. I truly, truly feel for you. And I told you that last week. I have the connection there, Jim Levitt. who's a K-State guy, went and built up that program. Want to see them succeed. And God, yeah, you didn't get a lot of help. It was also just a meltdown at the end of the game there. The snap, it looked like Bohannon was about to drive you guys down for the win. You snap it behind him, then it turned. That play call, I don't know what that was on third down. It's just like a draw for like 2 yards, and then it's a long field goal. There's a low snap. Somehow the kid still gets the ball up there with the distance, and it just barely misses. I was sick to my stomach for you, Justin. I was sick to my stomach for you at the end of that game. So shout out to USF and Gary Bohannon for playing real tough in the swamp. I wanted that badly for you guys. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But hey, I'm trying to give you some shine here on the channel for the effort, because that was a tremendous effort, and I really enjoyed watching that game. MJ Allen 77. Thank you for the donation. Thank you for being here. MJ Allen says, Tulane, really? I'm pulling for K-State to blow you next week and losing to Texas later in the season for the 7th year in a row. Yeah, Tulane, really? It happened. It happened. I got nothing for you, man. I got nothing for you. I broke it down a little bit earlier in the chat. I'm not going to spend a ton of time doing it again, but it did happen. Texas is taking care of business. Your Longhorns actually really impressed me. Let me get to some notes here on Texas. Texas showed me something, and I realized you could look at that and say, well, I mean, John, it's UTSA, and they were down by 10 in the first half. Yes, they were. But UTSA, first of all, shout out to them for what they've done, what they did last year, and still being a tough team this year. I mean, almost beat Houston, obviously, in week 1. Like, UTSA can play, man. UTSA is not just a pushover. And how many times has Texas been in that spot? Coming off the high of almost beating Alabama, I guess, like in a way high. I mean, Sark's press conference made it seem like they got a moral victory out of that thing. So the high of the Alabama game, coming home to play UTSA, in that spot, Texas has faltered time and time again over the last 15 years, and then they fall behind 17-7. You get the surprise onside kick pulled on you, right? They recover that, and then they score on a trick play. I mean, it's like bang, bang. Everything is rolling for the Roadrunners. Texas was calm, composed itself, got it back tied up before halftime, and then controlled the second half to win the game by 3 touchdowns. That's what Texas should do. And time again, we've seen Texas fail to be able to do that. I know it seems a little bit like kind of like a participation sort of trophy for Texas here. Like, congratulations, you were composed enough to beat UTSA at home when you're Texas and you have 3 straight top 10 recruiting classes on the roster right now. But that is where Texas has failed. And in a way, it doesn't. I mean, I think the Alabama game says more. But in a way, it almost says more to me that Texas did that than the Alabama game, because I just did not expect them to, especially after falling behind in the way that it was happening, be able to just compose themselves, gather themselves, just keep feeding Bijan, and with a beat-up Hudson Card, still go out there and win the game by 3 touchdowns. Impressive stuff from Texas. And again, this is all like, I'm having to praise Kansas. I'm having to praise Iowa State. I'm having to praise Oklahoma. I'm having to praise Texas here on this chat. But you know what? I'm doing it because I'll keep it real. I'll keep it real here on this channel. All right. So Texas did impress me with that. I would not take anything away from that win or the way that it happened or anything like that. Now, got to continue it through Big 12 play. And I'm sure the Red Raiders are chomping at the bit to get their crack. But Texas right now looks like they may have a different level of focus, and that Sark may actually be making some real legitimate progress here with that country club culture. I hope that's the jinx. You guys know that. But based on what happened last week, I got to give them their props for that. Jason, thank you for the donation. Jason says, what do you think about Venables coaching against his alma mater next week? Yes, Brent Venables, one-time K-State linebacker, early Bill Snyder days, a Salina, Kansas kid who's now made it big and is the head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners. Frankly, the vibe I get from Venables is just that it doesn't matter that much to him. Venables famously left K-State before the 1990. Well, it was announced he was leaving K-State before the 1998 Big 12 championship game, which K-State lost in heartbreaking fashion in multiple overtimes to Texas A&M that cost them an appearance in the national championship game. And a lot of fans have never really forgiven Venables for being a part of that. Felt like there was a distraction there with some of those coaches leaving to go join Bob Stoops' first staff. But every time Venables would get brought up to be the guy to take over at K-State, which has happened multiple times for a long time, that was the real like fantasy head coach for K-State among K-State fans. I don't know, man. It just never seemed like he had much interest. It doesn't seem like, I could be wrong. Maybe he'll say something different at his press conference this week, but I don't get the vibe that Venables really cares that much or that it matters that much to him. He's also not coaching against Bill Snyder here, which maybe that would, mean more to him, being a guy that played and then coached under Bill Snyder. So it's a storyline, but I don't think it's really all that significant. Oklahoma's playing really well. They've got massive expectations. They're heading out of the conference. K-State just tripped up against Tulane, so I don't know. I don't think that story will get a ton of run or a ton of play this week, but maybe so. Maybe so. For the record, I mean, look, I would have loved Brent Venables to be the head coach at K-State at some point, because I felt like that was kind of like the place where he belonged as a head coach. That's why I was a little skeptical of jumping straight to Oklahoma. But they looked great on Saturday against Nebraska, and they've looked pretty good outside of one half this year against Kent State, the first half last week. And maybe there was some sort of look ahead spot with Nebraska coming up next on the schedule. I don't know, but yeah. I see Blake Venables has been a head coach for 3 games. LMAO. Yeah, it has only been 3 games. And look, I would love nothing more for K-State to bring that all crashing down next week. But I'm not super confident in that right now. I mean, Oklahoma just put the most lopsided win on Nebraska that Oklahoma has had since 1990. I mean, the offense, like the first half, their offense. And I know it's Nebraska operating under an interim coach, but I really, truly thought we'd get a pretty inspired, good effort out of Nebraska. And it seemed like really all they had was just that scripted first drive that took them into the end zone. But outside of that, the Oklahoma offense in the first half averaged they had 355 yards and averaged over 8 yards per play. I mean, Oklahoma was ripping off over 8 yards per play in that first half. And then they were able to just take their foot off the gas in the second half. I mean, Dylan Gabriel only played 2 series in the second half. So he gets to have a nice little rest. Doesn't have to worry about stressing too much in the second half. And that's pretty nice. It's pretty nice for OU to be able to put that one in the deep freeze that early. Most points ever in Lincoln for Oklahoma in 43 games that they played there. So it was very good. That offense looked good. Gabriel did it with his legs once. He was throwing some BBs as well. It was an impressive performance. By the way, did you guys know this? I'm going to get one shot in here. One shot. There are a few targets that I can take shots at as of right now. One of them would be Nebraska. They have not beaten an FBS opponent in 9 straight tries. It was October 6th of last year, the last time that they beat an FBS opponent. I believe that was Northwestern. So it's been almost a calendar year since the good old Cornhuskers have beaten an FBS opponent. Not good. That is not good. That is not getting it done. Not getting it done for the Huskers. Speaking of Nebraska, this will be of note to Kansas fans, Iowa State fans, I guess K-State fans. I'm not sure that Nebraska is going to be beating down Chris Kleiman's door, at least as of right now, after the Tulane game. Look, I know a lot more goes into it than just one game, and much like recruiting, coaching search probably wouldn't overreact to one game, but Matt Campbell, Lance Leipold, obviously have been rumored as candidates at Nebraska. Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports went so far as to say that Matt Campbell is interested in Nebraska. Here's something from Pete Thamel. We know about Urban Meyer, and this is another direct contradiction here. Dennis Dodd reported that there was contact between Urban Meyer and Nebraska over the weekend. Pete Thamel at ESPN says that is not true. Pete Thamel tweeted out, source, there's been no contact between Nebraska and Urban Meyer. He's expected to remain at Fox and not pursue coaching opportunities. Okay, so a couple things here. One, obviously, that directly contradicts, again, what Dennis Dodd had said. And so it makes you question the validity then of the Matt Campbell interest, all right? Is Dennis Dodd going to be accurate on that, but not accurate on this? I just know Pete Thamel I respect a lot. I used to love listening to him on the Yahoo College Football podcast. He's the guy, the dude at ESPN right now. Like he's a pretty well-sourced guy that doesn't tend to miss. So now you look back on it if you're an Iowa State fan and you say, okay, like, does Matt Campbell really have this interest here? The other thing I would say is that it feels like Matt Campbell has done a pretty good job, or his agent has done a pretty good job of getting his name linked to a ton of jobs, which even if you don't want them, that's good business. You want your name linked to all those jobs because that'll help you line your pocketbooks, man. That'll help put some more money in your pocket. And it really feels to me like Campbell has been a pretty savvy dude, and certainly his agent has been a pretty savvy dude in man or woman, whoever it is, in getting his name linked to all these different jobs. And so that could be another case of that. Also, I mean, I had this thought, like, I don't know if you're Nebraska and the way Kansas is going right now, if Kansas keeps playing like this, even if Iowa State has a nice season, they go 8-4, Kansas goes 7-5, 8-4, something like that. Wouldn't Leipold's name then be hotter? Leipold's name maybe becomes hotter because he's just flashier right now. And we're so like right now in the moment with these things. So whereas I was saying like a week ago, this may be coming a year early for Kansas to really be that scared. Leipold may be too far ahead of schedule, man. I mean, he's just pummeling Houston in their home stadium already 3 games into year 2. Maybe he's going to ascend to the point where that would be the obvious choice. I mean, we had a serious discussion, at least on Twitter, about Kansas hosting College Game Day this week. It didn't happen, but that was a serious conversation. Scott Van Pelt was mentioning it on SportsCenter. What that means is Kansas is a story. We love stories. We love what's new. We love what's fresh. And right now, it seems to be Lance Leipold and the Jayhawks. And I would imagine, again, that they're going to win this weekend. They should be a much better team than Duke. I would think they will win that to get to 4-0 and then be playing Iowa State. And there's a matchup of the two coaches right there. That can be future Nebraska Coach Bowl right there in that game. But that was just a thought I had. Like, is Matt Campbell, when this is all said and done, going to be the guy that would be like top of the list from like the Big 12 / regional candidates there for Nebraska? I don't know, man. Maybe Leipold does. Maybe he does shoot up that fast. And I see Adam. I checked the chat here. He says Lance may be a little old. You are right. I mean, that would be an advantage. That would certainly be an advantage for Matt Campbell over Leipold, is the age factor. No doubt about that. And, proven at the FBS level more than or not the FBS, the Power 5 level more than Leipold is with what he's put together at Iowa State over the last few years. So maybe that still wins out, and maybe they wouldn't be as beholden to, heat of the moment sort of thing. But if Urban Meyer truly is out, and then it comes back to like more realistic candidates here for Nebraska, that'll be a really interesting one to monitor as things continue throughout the year. Okay. If you guys have anything left, I got about 10 more minutes, like 5-10 more minutes with you here on the chat tonight. So make sure, get those donations in. If you have something that you want to address with me to get your question or comment here on the chat, click the $sign below the chat box where it says say something. That's how you'll cut through everything else that's happening in the chat. Get your question or comment onto the show. So you've got 5 or 10 minutes, 5 or 10 minute warning on that to do so. If you are watching this taped and not live, it's John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you'd like to donate and support the channel as well. Because when you do donate, not only are you being a part of the chat and dictating the content here, but you're also just supporting me, bringing you Big 12 content week in, week out here on this channel. Another way you can support without spending a dime is just to click the like button. If everybody could go like the video right now. We've got 320 people in here, 73 likes on the video. We can get that ratio up. I'd appreciate it. Helps me out with the YouTube algorithm, etc. as well. So thank you, everybody, for doing that. I can give you a little update here on the Pac-12 TV deal from one and only John Wilner. John Wilner it was a mailbag, actually, but he had a very lengthy response when he was asked the question, does ESPN have total leverage over both the Big 12 and the Pac-12? So it was a question regarding both conferences. And I'm going to start reading to you here from this. He says, when the Pac-12 announced in early July that the presidents and chancellors had authorized Commissioner George Kliavkoff to begin media rights negotiations, it avoided any reference to timing. No date was given for the start of the 30-day exclusive negotiating window for ESPN and Fox. We believe that window was delayed until the Big Ten concluded its media deal, which was announced August 18th. If the Pac-12's exclusive negotiating period opened days later, then it would be coming to a close right about now. So that's important here, because what is the latest thing that we saw? We saw the report come out that the Pac-12 and ESPN were hundreds of $1 million apart. That would seem to make sense if we got close to the end of that exclusive negotiating window. that they would have then dropped that in. That's basically what he says. He says, and that meshes with the comment earlier this week by New York Post media reporter Andrew Marchand that ESPN and the Pac-12 are hundreds of millions of dollars apart. If the 30-day window is closing this week or next, then it would be about time for ESPN to place a firm offer on the table, and that could be well short of Pac-12 expectations. This is Wilner. Wilner says, we never expected the conference to sign an agreement during the exclusive period. All signs pointed to Kliavkoff taking the inventory to the marketplace and seeking bids from other companies. After all, why would ESPN bid against itself? True. Makes sense. And then he details like, hey, if they're hundreds of millions of dollars apart, that could mean that the deal ESPN has proposed is $330 million per year over 5 years, and the deal that the Pac-12 wants, $400 million over 5 years, and then you extrapolate that over 5 years, that's a difference of $350 million. That's all it would really take. But he also goes on to say this. Therein lies the trick for the conference and why these negotiations were always going to be difficult, the lack of competition for its inventory. NBC, CBS, and Turner don't appear to be serious players. We're skeptical about Fox's interest. The network already has what it wants, the LA market. So the Pac-12's best option for competition seemingly is from Amazon, which is both good and bad. And this is now a very common thread that you're hearing here. The Pac-12 is having to negotiate against ESPN with no competition other than Amazon, and that's why they're leaning more toward perhaps that's going to be the option, is signing some sort of big deal with Amazon, a la like the broadcast we saw on Thursday night between the Chiefs and the Chargers, getting on there with Amazon Prime. And so again, he outlines here, it's good because Amazon has plenty of cash and probably would overpay. Amazon would overpay because they just want the marketing. They want more people signed up, more people using their products so that they can then get them into Prime and buying more products off of Prime, and that's where they're going to make their money. But the problem is they don't have maximum visibility or media messaging opportunities. So not only would you have to be telling recruits to go stream it, more people obviously are going to have like over-the-air TV than streaming, even as popular as streaming is these days. And then on top of that, you're not getting like narrative control. If you're on ESPN, ESPN is going to be more motivated to talk up your games, get it more pub on College Game Day, push people to your games, as opposed to if you're on Amazon Prime, they have no real motivation to do that. So that is the issue there. And this is the concession that Wilner actually made here on this. Wilner says that's one advantage for the Big 12, in our opinion. We believe both ESPN and Fox are interested in the Big 12, in part because its basketball brand is strong. ESPN isn't part of the Big 10 rights agreement, and as a result, needs Big 12 basketball to fill the inventory demands for ESPN+. When you slice and dice everything, it becomes clear that the Big 12 has some advantages over the Pac-12, and the Pac-12 has some advantages over the Big 12, and that's exactly why we believe the conferences are in roughly the same position. One of them will end up with a media rights deal worth several $1 million more per school than the other, but the difference won't be transformational, not like the massive revenue bump in the Big 10. So that is as close to a concession as we've really gotten out of Wilner this whole time with all of that, saying like, yeah, one of these leagues is probably going to get a deal that is several $1 million more per school, but it won't be transformational money. And I think that almost is like setting the table for it to be the Big 12. I mean, he's saying there, Fox and ESPN will actually be interested in the Big 12, maybe not so much in the Pac-12, although you could also read into that as him calling his shot on the Pac-12 because he says Amazon could overpay. So maybe that's the deal. Amazon will wind up getting the Pac-12 a little more money, but they're going to lack in exposure and not be on ESPN nearly as much compared to the Big 12. Would you take that deal if you're the Big 12? I might take my chances with that trade-off if it's going to be a shorter-term deal, like 3 to 5 years, and then wait it out and see how much streaming really, truly does catch on after that, or where it continues to push toward. Obviously, streaming has already caught on, but how much it continues to grow over the next 3 to 5 years. And then maybe by that time, ESPN is more out the door for the Big 12, and you can go to an Amazon or something of that sort. But I thought that was a really interesting detail there and an interesting outlook on it from Wilner, who is admitting that it won't be like these leagues signing the exact same deal, even if he feels like they're in fairly similar positions. And he just gave you an advantage that the Big 12 has. So not all terrible anti-Big 12 stuff, right? Calico Willie, what's up, Calico Willie? Thank you for another donation. Appreciate you, my friend. Calico Willie says, what were your thoughts on the Thursday Prime setup? I thought it was really good. And would you think the Big 12 could benefit from that? All or Nothing with Michigan was a good broadcast when it aired. So I did not see All or Nothing with Michigan. I thought it was a good broadcast. The issue I had with it is there were two things. Picture quality was great, which I think would be I think that would be like the hardest part to make sure that you get lined up all correctly is the picture. But they seem to have that nailed. And I thought like graphics, like in-game, most of that stuff was very good. The audio was a little weird to me. Like I felt like Arrowhead, you had a pick six, a 99-yard pick six, and it didn't seem like it was near loud enough with the crowd noise. I felt like they had some mixing issues as far as that went. And Michaels and Herbstreit, I think, just need to develop some more chemistry. I thought it was just clear to me that they didn't have the chemistry that Al had with Chris Collinsworth. So, some minor, like nerdy broadcast sort of details there were the only issues that I really had with it. But for a first broadcast, no, I mean, I thought they did great. And I think that's going to be a really well put together outlet, if that is any indication. Could the Big 12 benefit from that? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the same reasons we're talking about with the Pac-12, the Big 12 could benefit from that. It could just be that it winds up giving you a place where you can not only put your games on that can be a part of the future, but you might get a little overpayment. But right now, again, all the momentum seems to be the Pac-12 going there. So would they be interested at all in the Big 12 if they've got a decent chunk of the Pac-12? Perhaps not. Perhaps not. So then I don't know. Maybe you're taking it somewhere else, a different sort of streaming option there. Calico Willie, Big 12 on All or Nothing every year could be fun. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm here for any kind of content like that. Hell, even a couple of years ago when KU did the Les Miles show, like Miles to Go, that provided some really interesting content. I would be all for it. Would be all for that for sure. Okay, I think that's going to about do it. We're getting close to an hour here. Thank you all for hanging out with me once again. Please tell your friends, family, etc. about the channel if they're into college football, if they're into the Big 12. You got fan groups on Facebook, Twitter, whatever it might be. Make sure that you share this YouTube channel. Let's continue to grow it. We're getting closer and closer. We're creeping up on 15K. We're creeping up on 15K subscribers. And let's continue to make this the best Big 12 community out there and bigger and better. Hit me up on Twitter at JL Kurtz. Try to be pretty responsive in the DMs if you have anything between now and then. Justin, I love the shot here at the end. Justin donated just so that I would say UCF sucks to end the broadcast here. Just UCF. I know you guys have a Twitter mafia too, much like Cactus Mafia. That was Justin that said that. I just had to read it. Don't shoot the messenger. But Justin says UCF sucks. So that's apparently how we're ending the chat here tonight. And I can at least appreciate the gamesmanship there by Justin at the end, right before the final bell. Anyway, it's going to wrap it up for me. I appreciate you guys. Should be back at it on Wednesday. And if something major happens in between now and then, I can hit you with some content as well. So take care. See you guys later and have a great rest of your Sunday night.